Welcome to Magical Aspirations, a podcast for magical people where we aspire to gather all of the knowledge that magic has to offer, a place to illuminate and demystify all things magical. Good morning. This is Reverend Raven, and I have Annalisa and Adriana here with me this morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies. I am really excited to talk about our topic today. With the title that we came up with when we've been kind of just kicking around names is we're going to talk about how to be a love warrior in this crazy world. And I am really excited about this topic. There's so many places that we can go with this. The first thing that I wanted to just kind of bring up is, obviously we know there's a lot of things going on in the world around us and things that we don't personally have control over. But the thing that we do have control over is ourselves and how we respond and react to those situations around us. So with that in mind, we just wanted to kind of have a discussion today about what are some of those practical things that we can do in our everyday lives to create change in the world around us. Would you ladies say that's pretty fair?
Absolutely.
Geez, yes, absolutely. It's so there's just so much, and and this is me speaking from my own personal experience from everything going on in the last 2 weeks, that it gets heavy, and it's easy to get bogged down in it and to forget what the overall mission of why we're here is supposed to be. And I have had to work very hard over the last couple of weeks to keep that in check.
True. And we're right in the heart of Pisces season. So, man, everything's getting us right in the feels.
Right in there.
Right up in
Man, I'm not normally a super cryy and emotional person, but the other day I wasn't feeling well physically and I just sat on the couch and cried.
it.
Man, it's
necessary.
so heavy. Just the collective energy right now, and so many things going on around us. But that doesn't mean that we're powerless. Like we said, we are warriors of love. And what that means is that we can fight with every inch of ourselves and with our hearts, our minds, and our bodies to create change in the world around us.
Oh, I just got chills just listening to
I know. Like
that.
that.
Yeah. It's interesting that well, it's not interesting, it just makes sense. But you speaking on love and how using our hearts to fight back in every way that we can. Because actually, the past couple of days, my heart space area has been aching. And not only does it like ache in the front, but the whole area in the back is just like through and through, so tender and tight. And it just is like, and I know from the past that a lot of it has to do with just like what's going on collectively, because when these things happen so like intensely in my body, it's not just my stuff, like it's us just like soaking in everybody else's things that people are going through, our loved ones. And so I had to get ready for this podcast. Like I felt not ready before us jumping on. And I had to kind of stretch my body out so intensely, like listening to like meditation music and find a way to give myself some care and nourishment instead of just like pushing it off, going about my day, drinking some matcha and just like pretending like it wasn't an ache that I was feeling. So finding that attention and that nourishment in that moment. And then afterwards, I took a gorgeous shower. I used this new scrub, this new lotion, drank me some water. And now I actually feel ready to talk about this topic. And the ache is still there, but it doesn't feel as heavy, if that makes sense.
It really
Yes.
does. I appreciate that Becky said earlier that when, she wasn't physically feeling well the other day and just sat on the couch and cried, I was thinking about how, self-love and what's the term that self-care, like that's such a hot topic and whatever nowadays. And I think people really fluff that up a lot. Because I was thinking about things that I do for like not just baths and showers and all that. They're all wonderful meditation, they're all great things, but self-care, as we've touched on before, is really about diving deep. And I too found myself a couple of times through the last couple weeks just having to cry a little bit here in my bathroom, just ugly crying by myself. And the ache didn't really go away, but it did help it feel a little bit lighter. So it is, man, we really all do kind of fall on the same page. It's really reassuring to know that I'm not the only one
Yeah.
kind of struggling a little.
Yeah. Yeah, and to jump off of what you guys both have just said, um, I really think the first step is listening to our emotions.
Mm,
Mhm.
mhm,
Mhm.
mhm,
What are we feeling right now?
mhm,
And
Mhm.
then we can figure out a why, and then we can figure out an action plan. Is there something that I need to do with this emotion? Or do I
mm,
just need to let it set and be and give it time to move on?
Mm.
mm,
Mm.
mhm,
So, being able to recognize what you're feeling and how you're feeling is the biggest thing, the biggest tool that we have in our toolbox for self-care.
mm,
Yeah.
We have to be able to recognize what we're feeling and respect that that's valid.
Yeah. I
I
couldn't
mhm,
think,
agree more.
a lot of times and, growing up, I felt like I did this a lot where I was like, "Oh, man, I'm feeling this way, but I shouldn't. Like, I have no reason to be sad right now," or whatever, like dismissing my emotions. And especially coming from a family with all brothers. Do y'all know that I have 5 brothers?
I did not know that.
5 brothers. I'm the only girl, and so there were so many times that they made me feel like, "Oh, you're just being a girl. Why are you being a weenie? Like, why are you sad right now? Like, you're not allowed to feel, like, those emotions." And so there
mm,
were so many times that I would just be like, "Well, I shouldn't feel that way," so just kind of dismissing it. And the more that you dismiss your emotions and what is going on inside of you, the more problems that you have with it because you
mm,
just keep burying that down deeper and deeper. You're not
mhm.
really resolving the issue or giving it the space to heal. You're just saying, oh, no, this isn't here because it's inappropriate to feel this way right now.
Right, right. Or because somebody told you that you shouldn't feel that. I can relate to that a lot, just being told like, "Oh, you're too much. Oh, you're too emotional. Oh, you're too this. Oh, you're too that." Um, and that really laid a lot of not great groundwork for definitely not being able to identify the difference of any emotions. I only just recently in the last couple of years, I printed out like a feelings wheel that like, it takes you from like the basic emotions, anger, happiness, sadness, so, a few other things, and it breaks them down into like these actual physical feelings. I'll take a picture of it and I'll see if we can post it because it really helped me identify like the difference between some really small emotions like, anxiousness and something slightly different than that. And once I was able to piece that apart, I was able to recognize whether it was something that just needed to be seen and be heard, and then it can be released and let go, or like if it's something that I actually needed to work on.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really like that. Actually, you guys will hear me talk quite a bit about my Becoming Unstoppable group that I'm a part of. And
Mhm.
Jackie, my wellness coach, is going to be one of our guests here in a couple weeks.
Mhm.
But a couple of months ago, at the beginning of the year, she was having us kind of get a baseline of where we we're at. And we were supposed to take photos and measurements and things like that because part of the focus is on our physical nutrition and wellness and things like that. But I went back to her and asked, "Do you have something like this for emotional health?"
Mhm.
Because that to me is what I am trying to cultivate. Everything that I'm doing right now in my life, whether it's the physical, the spiritual, or emotional work, it's all pieces of the puzzle that are coming together to create this whole person that is well.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
being able to identify those emotional factors that play into it, it really helps you to gauge where you're at and how you can get better.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm,
Mhm.
mm.
Mhm.
And, like, that is so, so freaking important, to bringing in that love warriorhood, warriorship, whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
but also into your magical practice. I had such a hard time being intuitive because I was denying myself of actually feeling my feels.
Mm.
And I felt like, "Oh, I'm blocked. It must be a curse." But no, you just are numb, sweetheart. You're
Mhm.
really stuffing all of those emotions down. And, like, from a psychology perspective, a lot of us adults are emotionally stunted because of either trauma, societal, the way that we've been taught. Something happened and taught us to either not feel or to um limit ourselves in our emotional capacity. And so that's why there's a lot of issues around communication, around
Mhm.
compromise, relationships in general, and peace as a whole, and
Mhm.
why it's so easy for us as a society to push individualism. Because if we dare to think as a community, that means we
Mhm.
have to feel and feel
Right.
hard
Right.
and deeply.
Well, that it's so, with everything that God. So with everything going on with the Ukraine right now, you try to bring it up in conversation. Like I found myself not really wanting to be immersed in it, but having this need to want to talk about it. Um and I kept finding that people would immediately meet you with like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, I don't want to talk about that." And I know that, but, like, I kinda have to. My husband and I have kinda developed this really good little system. He stays very informed. He was in the Army, so it's kinda he's already in that world. Um, and he knows that I can be a little sensitive about it, and so he watches the news and he keeps up to date, and he asks me whenever he's like, "Do you wanna talk about it? Are you ready to talk about it?" And I'm like, "Oh, not today," or, "Yes, we can talk about it today." Um and, like, kinda gauging things like that, I think is really important because 'cause it's been really helpful for me for wanting to stay informed, but also being conscious of my boundaries of, like, how much I can take at, like, one time.
Mm. Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, that is
Mhm.
really important, I think, to respect that in ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, this is a little bit triggering for me because my brother served in the Marine Corps.
Mm.
Back whenever I was in college, he was in Iraq, and we would stay up all night watching CNN. It would be
Mm.
on the TV,
Mm.
and I watched them, go into Fallujah on CNN at 3 a.m. And it brings back those memories for me as well, just having to be constantly on alert and informed and
Mhm.
things like that. It constantly like flooding all my thoughts.
Mm.
And, it was very impactful for me, emotionally during that time frame, and obviously it was for him and my entire family, to go through that kind of a situation, but I find myself in this situation, really empathizing with the people, who are there right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And, actually, one of my high school classmates, a gal I went to school with from elementary through high school, she's a missionary in the Ukraine,
Mm.
and
Mm.
she, 2 weeks ago changed her name on Facebook, I believe to protect her identity.
Yeah.
Mm.
And she is posting a ton and,
Mhm.
just updates of information of what's happening and, what's going on and pray for us. And this is, where we're at. And the children that are here with me right now in the mission, they're really scared in the hallway and covering themselves in blankets. And please pray for us.
Mm.
And that has been a lot to deal with emotionally. But
Mhm.
Mhm.
I need to know what is going on so I can help.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And on the other side of that, I have to realize what am I able to handle at this point in time? Like what you said, Annalisa, I do have to kind of protect
Mhm.
my emotions as well, because if I'm only thinking about that, it's going to bog me down so much that I can't do anything else, including care for myself.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Because
Mhm.
that's exactly what I found happening was that I was just getting you were talking about, like, guilt earlier. I mean, for right now, at this moment, I am perfectly safe in my wonderful home here and, you know,
Mhm.
wherever, and there are people who don't feel that right now, and, like, that is a I feel guilty for feeling safe, and, like, that is troublesome to me, so, like, trying to refigure out how to gain that love warrior kind of aspect of that, like, what can I do sitting here, and honoring those boundaries has been really difficult because, like, there are people who they're getting all of their boundaries literally violated right now, so, like, who am I to sit here and say that those boundaries are more important? But for me, they are, and for me to function and to keep going down this path and being where we need to be, to say what we need to say, to help who we need to help, it's important for me to stay centered. Like, I can't a lot of people are talking about that wonderful show on HBO called Euphoria or whatever. I can't
Mhm.
watch stuff like that because it sticks with me too much, it sits with me too hard, and people look at me like I'm crazy, like, "What do you mean you can't watch that?" And, like, I can't. It's hard for me to leave it at the end of the episode, you know? And so, like, it's been a really weird feeling to navigate with all of this.
Mhm.
Mm. Mm.
And I really think that this circles back to what we were just talking about with using your intuition
Mm.
and allowing yourself to feel those heavy and hard emotions,
Mm,
um, and setting boundaries. We've talked about that
mm,
in the last few episodes, but that's really important, because if you are, like I said, allowing yourself to be bombarded by all of this information that you don't even know how to process or deal with, you know, it's going to be harmful and it's going to be detrimental.
Yeah.
So listen to your intuition.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah. Absolutely. And know that, like, feeling your feels is very broad. We all know what it means for us, but people who are listening might also have their own definition. But to remember the whole of who you are, the whole of your being. So, spiritually feeling your emotions may be acted out by burning a candle,
mm.
but physically feeling your emotions may be sitting in the shower, butt ass naked, crying your eyes out. Or it could look like you taking glass bottles and throwing them on a safe place that's secluded so you don't
Oh,
hurt
that's a
anybody else.
that's a good
Um,
idea. That's a good idea.
smashing some glass bottles, or it could just literally just be sitting there tuning inward into how emotions show up in your physical. Is it in your legs? Is it in your chest? Is it in your head? Are you woozy? Are you hungry now? And all of this opens up more space, opens up more room for your body to breathe, for your spirit to breathe, because a lot of these heavy things, a lot of this pain, grief suffocates us in so many different ways. And so feeling the feels is about you learning how to breathe spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
Yes, definitely that. And that just made me think of what I was talking about earlier, having a bunch of brothers. I kind of had that mentality of to be tough and to be strong and to be resilient. I couldn't feel my emotions. But you know
Mhm.
Mm,
what? That's a bunch of
Mhm.
bullshit.
Mhm.
I am
mhm,
strong
Mhm.
because I am sensitive.
Mhm. Yep.
mhm,
My empathy for others is what makes me a warrior.
mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
Mm. Mhm.
And
Mm.
I know, right? And I think people that's what I was gonna so we've talked about being love warriors, but what do you guys define as that? And, like, how does that tie into all of this? Because warrior, I feel like, gets a really sometimes not great stigma, obviously, look at the first 3
Mhm.
letters that are in the word.
Yeah.
Um, and, like, that's not quite the energy that I think we're talking about here, but then also, I think when people hear the word love, they think, like, Valentine's Day and fluffy, huffy things, but I found a great little graphic that I thought really tied into this really well. It says, "Call it witchery, physics, or magical thinking. I believe there is a force of love greater than we can imagine at the core of everything. We have not even begun to tap into the potential that that force has to change our reality." And I really believe that about the force of love, period. Um, I think there is nothing greater than the power of love in this world, and that's not just romantic love. I'm talking about love
Mhm.
in general. Um, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I, um, love the word warrior, for so many different reasons, but it is such a it's if I had to call myself anything, that would be it.
Mhm,
Outside of daughter, sister, partner, tarot reader, blah, 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 blah. Warrior
mhm,
would be the thing that would define me. Because to me, it's about action and not only just frivolous action, it's also
mhm.
about um, fighting for things that mean so much to me,
Yes.
and
Mhm,
people who mean so much to me as well.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and I also believe that being a love warrior requires me to consistently take steps back to understand, is this love or is this fear? And it keeps me checking myself and holding myself
mm,
accountable, which we all need.
mhm,
Um, but then also there's grace that I extend to people who probably in somebody else's mind don't deserve it, but it creates so much less space in my life for me to extend love than to continue to extend vengeance and anger and
mm,
whatever else.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and I think love also leaves you so much room to be who you are without having to fix something.
mhm.
Consistently, like, let me change this, let me change that. Like, just let shit be, and maybe, just maybe, things will work itself out. So, warrior is a very special word to me. Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. I have to agree wholeheartedly. When I started studying paganism and learning about different pantheons, I was always attracted to the warrior imagery and especially the goddesses who were warriors.
Mhm.
Yes.
Goddesses like Athena and Freya.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
those, those are my number 1 and 2, patronesses because they are strong and fierce, but they also have the feminine side of having the love. To
Mm,
me, a warrior is a defender.
Mm,
It's not
mm,
someone that goes out seeking to start trouble or
mm,
mhm,
seeking a fight.
mm,
A
mhm,
warrior is someone who defends what is right and
mm,
what is just.
mm,
mm,
And
mhm.
so to me, that is what I want to be. In my heart of
mm,
hearts, I am a warrior of love. That is the person that I want to be and create.
Yeah.
I have a cool story about this. I was getting ready to officiate my first wedding with the beautiful bride Annalisa on here. I had never officiated a wedding before. I hadn't really led group ritual or anything like that. I felt, a little intimidated, like I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. And I was getting my hair done with the fabulous hair witch, Catherine Lane, who's going to be a guest here very shortly. And part of getting my hair done, we did a meditation, and I was focusing on what it was that I wanted to convey with that act of being the officiant and leading the ceremony. A wedding and a hand fasting, they're a union of love where two people have decided over anyone else that they are going to be partners and become one, become one heart and fight for a life together. So, what was I going to do to help them on their journey? And I did a meditation while my hair was soaking in the color. I had little headphones in there, and she had crystals in the bowl. And I wrote a message for my intention for the meditation. And I just channeled, I am a warrior of love.
Mm.
And with that simple phrase, I knew everything that I needed to know. I knew that the words would come to me that I was supposed to say because I was speaking from my heart. I had a greater purpose and intent. It wasn't about what Becky had to say about it or, what everybody else thought or whatever. I was channeling divine love.
Mm.
Ooh, girl. Woo!
So to me, being a warrior of love, it is being more than yourself. It's connecting to the universe and finding your divine purpose.
Oh,
Yeah.
Becky. Good God. I'm sorry, guys. I'm super emotional over here because my wedding was fucking beautiful.
Yes, ma'am.
But so that I have to tell a story, the precursor to that. Oh God, sorry. Hold on. Let me get my shit together. Jesus Christ. Okay, so I knew I wanted Becky to officiate my wedding when she got up at a friend of ours' funeral. Our dear friend Lauren, the anniversary of her passing was actually just a little over a week ago.
Yep.
And Becky and I had not known each other for very long. We met at a vet hospital on the outskirts of New Orleans. And Becky had gone on this ridiculous trek because a family member of her partner had passed. And she did all this crazy rushing to get back to New Orleans to go to the funeral of this girl that she had not known for very long. But if you knew Lauren, she was a warrior. Good God, since we're talking about this, like she was the definition of that.
Yes.
And Becky got up and spoke, and she hadn't known her for very long, and I hadn't known her for very long, but she touched all of us. And when you talk about like channeling, I sitting in this funeral of, I don't know, it had to be 200 or 300 people. The room was huge, just weeping because even then, Becky, I can't even. I sat there thinking in this girl's funeral that I was like, this is the woman who's going to officiate my wedding because this is what needs to happen. Like, so Reverend Raven, pour one out to your girl because you've always been that.
But I think that goes back to, like I said, being willing to listen to the messages from the universe, paying attention to your intuition and the messages that are being shared with us from the divine. That's so important because this life is about so much more than just us. But in order to put that into reality and make that happen, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
We have to care for this vessel that is our body, our mind, our spirit.
Yeah.
And using our intuition, we can figure out a way to create our own happiness so we can be those warriors.
I feel like that's also part of the warrior's creed is understanding rest, understanding when to replenish, when to exercise and practice. Because if you're going to be out there in battle, you're going to have to know when enough is enough. You're going to have to know when to pull back, when to step forward, when who to communicate and how to communicate what needs to get done. And all of that comes from you knowing yourself, believing in yourself, and believing in the cause and the purpose that it is that you are fighting for.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, I love that. I actually was just glancing down at my notes that I had put together in preparing for this. I wrote down choose your battles. That's so important that we're not wasting our energy on things that don't really matter and aren't important. But Adriana, you just said this. The why behind what we're doing. Why are we fighting for this? And that helps us come up with the how. If we know why it's important to us to care for our physical health or our spiritual well-being or our mental health, then that helps us to develop that plan of the action. The how do we make this happen?
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of just thinking of the timeline from when I first started doing tarot to now. And how I used to not really understand why people would say you need to protect yourself. You need to protect yourself. Because I was dumb with baby witch. It's fine. I'm like, I'm fine. Everything's gonna be great. But now the things that are said in a tarot reading, the messages that are channeled, the emotions that are shared between you and the client is incredibly vulnerable, incredibly special and precious, and that energy takes a toll on you. And I used to think that if I'm getting drained in these readings, then I must be doing something bad. I must be doing something wrong or whatever the fuck. And how now I do everything to protect myself before investing in the time, space, and spirits that are going to step forward when I start that reading, because I deserve to not live a short life just because I decided not to protect myself.
Yes.
And how
you don't have to sacrifice your well-being to help others.
Yes. And it's such it was a hard lesson for me because I think as the things that I've seen, like in my family and just the women as a whole, have done nothing but sacrifice themselves. And even just thinking back to like my parents and my mom, I know she was unhappy in her marriage, but she stayed for us. She stayed for her kids. And that breaks my heart to think about how you have to continuously choose somebody else over and over and over and over again. But there's little to no room for you to just do something for yourself that probably is going to end up being better, but you aren't taught that, or it's not ingrained in you to do for yourself and care and love on yourself before you do for other people.
Yeah. I definitely think that was a big part of the past few generations, is that people just stayed where they were because they thought that they were doing it to help others. And, in my life and my upbringing and everything, my parents were divorced 3 times each. And, it was actually, looking back, it was so much better to be divorced than to be with somebody that you were unhappy living with. From like everyone's emotional well-being. And in the moment, I don't want to, say, oh, people were wrong for staying with somebody that they shouldn't, and why don't they
Mhm.
leave, and all of
Mhm.
that, like in a cocky kind of way.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that when you do what's best for yourself, everybody around you actually does benefit.
Mhm.
Indeed. Indeed.
Instead of you as the mom, staying in an unhealthy situation, your kids can learn and see that you could choose something different.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I was really grateful that my parents both had done that.
Mm. Mhm. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it makes me think about Becky, I know you were talking about, these different warrior goddesses that you were attracted
Mhm.
to, and same. Because if I think
Same,
about
same.
every single deity that I was just like, "Oh my god," they all are freaking warrior goddesses, not surprised.
Mhm.
Um, and it makes me think about how sometimes not everybody is gonna understand where you're coming from when you take these steps and take these actions. But you just have to continue to trust in the love that you're holding at
Mhm.
the center of everything and know that it's gonna work out. And that's something that also really fucking sucks.
I tell you.
It's part of being true to yourself is not giving a fuck that people
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing or
Mhm.
approve of what you're doing or look at you sideways or whatever. You know what? That's their problem. They don't understand what I'm doing.
Mhm.
It is, and sometimes it's I being a love warrior sometimes means cutting out people who, like you were talking about with divorce or like even friends. I have a friend that we were very close and this person was very special to me, but they were angry with the healing that I did and that I wasn't the same person as when we met and they wanted me to do all of their growth and healing for them, and it got to a point that like I just couldn't anymore. And when people ask me about this person, I just always kind of think, I just hope that they're doing well. I wish them no ill will or no harm, or we did not end on good terms by no means. It was a terrible conversation, but like, that's part of being a love warrior is I cut you out for me, I cut you out for you, but I still really hope that you're doing well over there,
Right.
But we can't anymore because this doesn't work for either of us.
Right. Right. And that's a great jumping point off of something that I wanted to talk about is that you have to clear out the crap. Clear
Mhm.
space of things that don't serve you. What are those
Mm,
things in your life that actually are kind of bringing you down? Is that
Mhm.
a relationship with a friend that you just hang on to because you've been friends for a long time that's
mm,
toxic? Is that, the fact that when you're tired, you sit and scroll on your phone on Facebook for 30 minutes mindlessly?
mhm.
Is that,
Mhm.
eating junk food before bed, or when you're
Mm,
sad, making poor food choices? Like, what are those things that are taking up space in your life and in your heart, that actually aren't positive for you?
mhm,
So
Mhm.
you have to identify what those things are first, but then
mhm,
cutting those out, that can actually leave so much room for growth.
Mhm.
Um,
mhm,
Going back to a plant metaphor that we've used before, at the end of the winter, there's all of this dead, and we have to cut that back so there can be room for new growth.
mhm.
Yes.
And with this being
Yes.
springtime, it's a great time for that. We can
Right.
see that in the world around us. So why not implement that into our lives right now?
Mm,
Mhm, mhm.
man, when I tell you I woke up March 1st like, "I'm going to clean at least one thing every damn day." It was like clockwork, like, "Let's go. Clear out the shit.
Let's do
Let's do it."
it.
And it's so, so refreshing because it's like, I know if there's clutter, it's either 2 reasons. Either I don't have enough room in my schedule to keep up, or I'm depressed. Either
Mm,
way,
yep,
something's wrong. Something's
yep.
going
Mhm.
on. And it's important for me to make sure I check in, become aware, and then make the change necessary. Because if spirit comes in to clear the shit, it's gonna be a whole lot more brutal than if I clean the shit. So
Isn't that
it,
the truth?
mm,
Yeah,
Jeez.
and
mm,
you're taking the responsibility too. It
mm,
goes back to
Mhm.
personal responsibility. You're the one that kind of created the mess. I'm not saying
mhm,
you,
Mhm.
I'm saying
mhm, yeah,
metaphorical we
yeah,
created those messes in our lives, so it's our responsibility to clean that up. And
Mm.
once we do it, sometimes in the moment it's really fucking hard. And you know what? I really like hoarding that thing.
mhm,
For
Right,
some reason,
right.
it gives me physical comfort, but you know what? I don't have any room for it anymore. So,
mhm,
if it's causing me anxiety to keep it, why the fuck am I doing that?
Right.
mm,
Right.
mm,
Cause like
mhm,
so looking at my little feelings wheel, we were talking about like aggressive and irritated. And so like looping that back into the love warrior thing and how we talked about, for example, Athena. She is someone who, if you read through her stories and her myths, that gods tend, the gods and the goddesses tend to be kind of arrogant anyway. But Athena will admit fault, move on and learn from it, but then, like her counterpart, Ares, who is the god of war also, but he tends to be a lot more blind in his rage and like raging on into things. So anger is the first thing on the emotion wheel, and then if you go to like aggressive and irritated, the next breakdown of feelings is clenching your face, heart racing, and tight jaw. When my house is a mess, I race around with those 3 feelings all the time, and I'll do that for a couple days sometimes and be like, "Why is my heart racing? Why am I clenching my jaw? Why am I angry all the time?" And it's because I'm ignoring the literal mess that's around me. Like,
same,
like
same,
Yeah.
like, so we take that, love warrior aspect of that and look at it, and like Becky's exactly saying, look at the trash. Choose to clean it out. Don't choose to sit there and look at it and be, angry.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely,
And that's in our lives too. Like I said, it's not just a physical mess, it's spiritual too. Um,
Absolutely.
what are things that we're choosing to do in our everyday that are harmful for us? And then on
Mhm.
the flip side, what could we add in after we take out that negative thing? What are some positive things?
Mhm,
mhm,
mhm, mhm.
So, using the example of sitting there scrolling on my phone on Facebook for half an hour, what if I just went outside?
mm,
Yeah.
What if I, went and hugged the tree in my backyard or walked my dog or, go played with the crystals in my garage or something like that? I'm actually going to get a lot more fulfillment,
Mhm, mhm.
emotionally and spiritually than, getting pissed off because somebody posted something stupid on Facebook.
mhm,
Right, right, right,
So, like I said, taking that responsibility, we can craft a life that we're happy to lead and that we're
right.
fulfilled to lead.
mm,
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I just want to harp on this just for a second. I use the word happy to mean content and fulfilled. It doesn't
mm,
mean every
mhm,
second of every day is going to be bliss and everything's wonderful and all of
mhm.
that because that's bullshit too. That's not real life. You can't just be content, in every second of every day, be happy with every situation, but you can control how you react to those situations.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
you
mhm,
can control some of the situations that you put yourself in.
And
mm,
I think that that's the biggest thing we gain from being love warriors. I think that's a beautiful definition of that.
Mhm. And making sure that your actions align with your values. That's
Whew.
so
that part,
important.
That
yeah,
is that is
yeah,
difficult but true. That is something
Yes.
I'm working very hard on.
yeah. We for so I do soul support, which is a like monthly subscription for, and we do themes every month. Uh, and so January's theme was values. And before I even had a chance to do the reading, I had to sit down and think about, well, what the fuck? What are my values right now? Because where I was last year, New Year's last year, is completely different than where I am now. And it's okay for your values to shift
Mm,
according to your growth, healing, changes, whatnot. Um, but naming the values and sitting there and understanding how these values show up in your life is also important as well. And
mm,
it made me realize that I had to clear out some of my own damn values that I
mm,
was holding on to, um, like valuing well, valuing self-sabotage was, even though it's something I don't wanna admit was a value, but it was. It was something
mm,
that I held on to, something I continued to practice, but it was getting in the way of my value around accountability and integrity and moving on,
mm,
because it was easier for me to flip into self-sabotage than it was for me to just own the thing and move forward, because that became
mm,
my norm.
Right, right. When
mm,
you say self-sabotage, are you talking about, like, sacrifice?
Sacrifice, but also words, around the way I talk to myself,
mm,
Okay,
and it's even ingrained in the way that I eat and
mm,
ingrained in the way that I sleep or don't sleep,
mhm,
right,
and how I choose to spend my morning routines as well.
right.
mm,
Mhm.
I understand that. I would look back at 6 months ago and, the fall before that, the summer, before that as well, I could look at my life and see patterns where I was really down and I had no energy and I was in a bad place mentally, and I was filling my time doing stuff for other people instead
Mhm.
of doing anything for myself. And I was just giving away all of these pieces of myself without taking time to replenish or to
Mhm.
mm,
fuel myself. And I have realized that whenever I do make time for myself and to do the things that are good for me, I actually can do a lot more for other people.
mm,
Mhm.
mhm,
And I
Mhm.
mhm,
have a more positive outlook on it too, because I was just getting so frustrated of like helping other people and doing all this shit for other people who weren't helping themselves,
Mm.
that then I would become resentful. And I'm
right,
like,
right,
well,
Mhm.
why the fuck am I doing this? Why am I involved with this group? And why am I doing this and that for that person whenever they can't help
Mhm.
themselves? So then I'm having that negative mindset too towards them and towards myself and all of that, and I'm like, "This is just a whole negative cycle." I'm not
right,
Mhm.
helping
right.
anybody. I'm pissed off because, I'm helping somebody. Like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this to myself? So,
Yeah.
again, it's like going back to that personal accountability, like,
Mhm.
when you're
Mm,
saying self-sabotage, that's part of my cycles, and my self-sabotage is, like, the sacrifice and being involved with so many different groups and so many different things that I have no time for myself. That's one of
mm,
my self-sabotage things where it sounds like it's a good thing that I'm, like, so active and involved, and I'm involved with this
Mhm.
nonprofit and this community group and blah, 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 but whenever my hands are, like, in all the pies, I run out of fucking hands, you know?
right.
Exactly.
So and then I don't have any time for myself, and then I just wanna come home and sit on the couch and do nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas now the changes that I've implemented into my everyday life, I'm getting up earlier, I'm working out in the morning, I'm having time for meditation. By
Mm,
the time that I get to work, I'm actually like mentally awake and like ready for the day. I'm
mm,
drinking less coffee than I was before because I was exhausted. I was having to constantly caffeinate, myself to like be
Mhm.
awake and be on. I'm making better food choices, so I'm, like, fueling my body with nutrition, and then I'm able to tackle mentally, when things are challenging better. when something
Mhm,
happens at
mhm,
work that, normally I would get like, oh, really pissed off about or really frustrated, I can take a step back and, take a deep breath and just take a moment, kind of let it go from the emotional attachment to that thing. And then I
mhm.
can figure out a way to deal with the situation more productively too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. That I can relate to that because I used to work in a very high stress environment. And it was kind of just what I was used to. It was what I did, it was what I was used to, and it's just kind of how I functioned in life. And I was actually just talking about my sister with this yesterday, that I didn't realize how like overloaded every last one of my senses was just all of the time, and I had, like Becky was saying, I had room for nothing else but to just want to sit on the couch and kind of do nothing because I was just so stretched. And when I would try to admit to myself or to certain people in the situation that I was having those feelings, um they made me feel less than, like that I was not a good worker, or that I had a poor work ethic, or
Mhm.
and all of these things that, like, anyone who knows me knows that that's not true. Anyone who works with me knows that I
Right.
am a hardcore workhorse, but I just couldn't. I had to remove myself from the situation, and I'm now in a much better space where it's a much more kind of controlled environment, and, like, there's no shame in admitting that I what I was in was not good. I had to take myself out of the situation, and, like, now I have all of this space. I'm able to sit down with you guys and have this podcast. Like, this is something I never could have done 2 years ago,
Mhm.
because it took me admitting that enough was enough, and that was a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Ooh.
definitely is, and it's kind of like, what you were doing before. It's like seeing what's going on in the nursing profession and in
Mm,
medicine,
Mhm.
that it's kind of rewarded the more you work, and you're
mhm,
expected to work all this overtime and not get lunch
mhm,
breaks and,
Right.
all of these things where it's like work, work, work all the time, and you don't have the equipment you need and things like that. And it's like, wait, why is this the thing that's getting rewarded? Like,
Yep.
why
right.
aren't we getting more paid vacations so we can have time off to spend with our families so we can be refreshed when we go back to work,
Absolutely.
so we can
Mhm.
refuel
Absolutely.
and we can do a better job whenever we go back to work? Our
Yeah.
job is to care for other living beings.
Right.
Why don't you allow your employees time to refuel so they can do a better job?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what the level of care that I can give to detail now is so much more because the edges of my brain aren't fuzzy, you know? Like, I have space to be like, "Oh, I missed that detail. Let me go back and do that." Where that is not something that if you cut to this time 2 years ago, I was starting to become, like, incapable of making kind of good decisions in a space where I needed to be clear and I couldn't,
Right.
and I got really shunned for admitting that trying to admit, when I was recognizing it was a problem, no one was there to
Mhm.
help me. Like, my wonderful husband was here to help me, obviously, but, like,
Right. Right.
in the workspace, there was no one that really supported what I was feeling because everyone else was feeling exactly the same thing, but, like, no one wanted to admit that it was bad.
Right.
Oh my
Right.
god, yeah.
And like I said, it's that mentality of, okay,
Mm,
that's what's expected, that you
right.
don't take care of yourself, and
Right.
that's not fair, and that doesn't create good employees.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Absolutely.
not.
Yeah. That oof. I'm just getting flashbacks
Yeah. Because
into the
Adriana and Becky, they
workspace.
were there. They know.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. That is I love seeing where you're at right now because you just feel so much lighter and joyful. And oh my god. Wow. The thing
Yeah, and I think that that goes back to taking responsibility for your own happiness, though. Once you
Mhm,
recognize that there was an issue, then you did leave and you got
mhm,
into a different situation that was better for you. And
Mhm.
mhm.
you are the creator and the designer and the architect of your own life.
Mhm.
Yes.
So what do you want
Mhm.
that life to look like? and
Mhm.
how can we create that?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think
And it
working
start
together with others is, like, so important, for
Mhm.
that because,
Yeah.
like Adriana said, we can see the change in you, Annalisa, and that's positive for us that we can
Mhm.
see like some things that you're doing and how that can influence our lives and some things that we can do to make ourselves better. And it's just like a snowball effect of positivity.
It
Mhm.
really is, it really is, and I was involved in Adriana also had a at the time, it was about 2 years ago this time,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
that we were starting this, it was not her soul support group, but a different one, Cultivating Alignment. Um, as a soul practitioner, it's hard for me to sometimes, like, open up about stuff, and having that sense of community in Cultivating Alignment and seeing all these other, wonderful people who were very clearly going through the same things as I was way more comforting than I could have ever realized. And that
Mhm.
is something that I'm super grateful for was that this little small community, it didn't have to be big. I'm not someone who I don't really thrive in big situations.
Mhm.
But it was this really safe, comfortable space to be able to stop and recognize those things. And we kind of called each other out sometimes in situations, which I think was really good.
Mhm.
And you need that sometimes. Like you need people to check you when you can't check yourself.
Mhm. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. And I just had this thought whenever you're talking about that with the sense of community, if we individually are love warriors, by creating a community where we surround ourselves with positive people who are, doing the thing inside that's making themselves happy or cultivating their own happiness, we can create an army of love warriors, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
You said
And
it.
that's like something with this podcast, just to be able to have that sense of community for people who maybe feel isolated and don't know other practitioners or,
Mhm.
have that positive influence around them. If other people can hear, some things that we're doing and have some practical examples, maybe that can benefit them too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for us to same for us, like we're the three of us, we teach each other stuff every day. Like I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
imagine the
Mhm.
community that hopefully we'll be able to get going of people that can keep teaching us things. Cause I am
Mhm.
always like I feel like I learn something new every day and I get a little disappointed when I don't learn something new every day.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I think that that's really something that's important for us, as individuals to do is to go back and, look at the situations around us and reevaluate, like constantly look at our lives and be like, is this serving me or is this not?
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
And be willing to change.
mm,
If
mhm.
Absolutely.
something isn't serving you, like be willing to let it go. Get rid
Yep.
of it. Don't
Absolutely.
hold on to it just because you've been holding on to it. That doesn't mean it's a
Mhm.
positive thing just because it's been there for a while. Like, maybe it's causing something detrimental in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Being
That's true.
willing to change is so important. Reevaluating your situation, and something that has been helpful for me is tracking. Where I'm
Mm, mhm.
tracking, what workouts I'm doing and when I'm doing a meditation and which deck I'm pulling a card from each day and things like that. If I can come up with a plan and track what I'm currently doing, then I can look back and say, okay, whenever I do X, Y, and Z, I seem to be at a good place.
Mm,
But like this
Mhm.
day, for
Mhm.
example, I had poor nutrition or I was emotionally really stressed out and I didn't take time to, meditate or go take a break and pet a tree for a minute or something like that. I can look back and say, oh, on that day I was really struggling. But these were the situations that kind of led to that. So then I can implement change moving forward.
Mm.
mm,
I love that. I
mhm.
love that. It is so important. It makes me think about, like, what do I do to improve my life? And
Mhm.
a lot of my focus has been around, like, mental stamina and mental
Mm,
clarity. And just by I'm not trying to change the way my brain chemistry works. That just is what it is. But I can definitely help my brain do certain things, and give it these little adjustments, to help me just navigate the day. So, for example, in my human muggle job, I do a lot of like recruitment work, and a lot of like talent search and in like interviews. So
Mm.
I love interviews because I love talking to people. I love hearing their story, what they're interested in. That shit, ugh, I love it. Um, and I take really great notes. I pride myself on taking excellent notes from jotting down everything they're saying, what they're connecting, what they're not saying, all of that. So I was I was suggested this app called Otter, and it pretty much just records when you're having a Zoom session, and then it transcribes it into notes for you so that you can read
Mm.
back through. And so I was like, okay, yeah, cool, great, great. It'll just be an extra to add to my notes that I already take. And so for the first couple of times that I used it, I was still taking my notes. And then one day I just was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna let the app do what it does, and I'll just take my notes from whatever was transcribed. And when I tell you that changed my fucking mind, because I wasn't working
Ooh.
so hard to keep up in the conversation, to take notes, to understand what they're saying, to respond. I could literally just be there in the moment with the candidate instead of trying to do all of these and juggle all of these other tasks. And I didn't realize how hard my mind was working to just show up to an interview. And
Mm.
implementing that one thing has totally changed the way I'm able to show up. And I feel like my conversations with candidates are so much more deeper, and I get to ask better questions, and really understand who they are than I was before. And I just didn't know that until it was brought to my attention. So
Mm.
brain stuff has been my thing for the past couple of months.
I
That's
am
really
so
cool. I love that.
I know, that's great, and I'm so proud of you because I think every single time I have ever seen Adriana in person, except for maybe once, she's had a notebook and a pen. So I know how hard that must have been to put down.
It was, and I'll still, like, jot little things, but I have completely put the pen down.
Oh, I'm so
Nice.
proud of
And
you.
then you can be more present in the conversation too and have
Exactly.
time to, respond appropriately instead of just concentrating on writing every little thing down.
Exactly,
That
exactly.
reminds me
Mm.
when I was in college, whenever, I was in organic chemistry, I had a tape recorder, and I would tape record the lectures in addition
Mm,
to taking notes, and then I could go back and, like, listen to it again because it was very difficult, and, I wasn't
Mhm.
getting everything, but, you're spending the entire time just trying to write down what they're saying. You don't have
mhm,
time to really, like, think about it and process
mhm.
it. So then that way you have time, to go back and listen to it later, but also in that present moment, you're giving your brain space to
Mm.
comprehend what's being said
100%,
Mm.
instead of
100%.
just jotting everything down, copying it
Yep,
really quickly and moving on to the next thing. Like you can process the information.
exactly.
Look at
Mm.
us. Look at
Yes.
us.
So speaking about note taking, that makes me think of something that I've been doing since the beginning of the year with my new planner. I have been designing my, what I'm going to do based on the days of the week.
Ooh,
And in the side of my planner, there's like a note space for the month, and just some lines there. And I've decided to put down what are the big goals I'm working on for the month, but also how do those relate to my values? What are the
Mm.
values that I'm trying to implement into my everyday life? So I've got that right there on the calendar. So I can implement things in my day to day that directly reflect my values. My actions are based on what I value.
Yes.
Mm.
So you've got your life together, basically, is what I'm hearing.
No, 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 no. I'm just working on it though. I'm working on it, and I feel like over the past few months that it has been getting a little easier to try to figure that out though.
Mm,
Because I am able to make an action plan based on my goals.
mm,
And then part of that too, I have in my calendar. I've talked before about following a Norse path. I have above the days of the week the associations of the deities, which ones are associated with each day. So Monday, for example, that's Mani's day, and Mani rules the moon. So on Monday, I try to do something that challenges and uses my intuition,
mhm,
and things
mhm,
related to the moon. On Tuesday, that's Tears Day. He is actually a warrior presence as well. He's about justice and balance. So, what are things in my life that are really important? What would I go to war over?
mm, mhm,
And what are ways that I can create balance in my life? So, a physical thing that I like to do on Tuesdays is practice some kind of yoga.
Mm.
I love that.
Mm.
I love that. I did my, when I did cultivating alignment, that was exactly why I chose Wednesdays to be our class days, because Wednesday is all about Mercury, which is all about communication and learnings. And I'm a Pisces Mercury, so I trip over my words consistently. I will go on 5 different tangents, and it's just part of my astrology, and I just, like, have to accept it. But having class on Wednesday, I could channel that Mercury energy, channel that clear thinking so that I could speak more coherently to my students. And it really works out. It really helps so much. And it just goes to show you how you can use these other tools to enhance what you already naturally are. And
Yes.
that's a gift. That's a gift.
Yes.
It is. Oh, I love that.
We're pulling out our inner warrior.
Yes.
Hell yeah, we are. Hell yeah. One last thing that I would like to discuss just on a practical standpoint is, ways that we can implement these types of changes. Like you said, Adriana, like, oh, so basically you have your life together. No. But you have to start somewhere. So pick
Mhm.
one or two things in your life that, you're maybe struggling with, or
Mhm.
a change that's easy to implement. Even something as simple as, packing your lunch so you have foods that are, fuel you for your day and that you're eating a little bit healthier. Or like I said, I like on Wednesdays, it's Odin's day, and Odin is the ruler of the runes. So I pull a
Mm.
rune on Wednesday morning, and then that rune kind of guides me throughout the day. I look up the meaning of the rune. I know most of them pretty well, but I don't know everything about all of them. So I look up in my book, that's kind of like the history of the rune and things like that, in the morning, and then throughout the day, I kind of see, like, what does this message have for me, and what am I supposed to learn today that I can implement into my life. So
Mhm.
start with one or two things that are easy.
Mhm.
And a good metaphor for this is stretching. If we're going to talk
Yes.
about working out and being physically active, you start by stretching. And there's so many different ways that you can stretch. It can be really simple, or you can have like a 15 or 30-minute stretching session if you want to, but
Mm.
starting with something simple. And
Yeah.
then once you make those one or two changes, then it's a little bit easier, for the next thing that you want to change, because your mind and your body are used to being more malleable, for example. Like I like
Mhm.
that word because you can
Mhm.
change the things in your life, and you have control over those things. But you have to get your mind used to that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Mhm.
get your mind used to breaking bad habits and starting
Mhm.
good ones,
Mhm.
starting new habits. You have to get in
Mhm.
a pattern of being able to do those things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you're
And
gonna
being
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and to be gentle with yourself when you inevitably trip up. That's where
Right.
I always
Mhm.
have my downfalls, is I set these big lofty goals, and then I inevitably trip up and I'm like, "Well, fuck it. Now I'm just gonna be bad."
Now I can't do any of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
start with 1 or 2 things.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
absolutely. Uh, this was such a fulfilling conversation, and I'm
Yay.
just, like, rocking back and forth because it was just so soothing.
Oh, the same. I'm just, like, spinning in my little spinny chair. I feel so much better now, like, yay!
Ah, yes.
And we hope that whoever's listening certainly is too. I know we're excited about the stuff we got coming up next.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. And I think that this is kind of a good place to end this conversation for today. But just to wrap up, how to be a love warrior in this crazy world, it's by taking care of yourself and
Mm,
paying attention to your spiritual nutrition.
Mm,
yes.
yes, yes.
All
Actually, will you say that again for the kids in the back?
right. How we can be a love warrior in this crazy world is by paying attention to our spiritual nutrition and taking care of ourselves first.
Mm,
Yes, Ashe,
thank you.
Ashe.
I needed to hear that again. I wasn't
And with
Mhm.
listening the first time.
and with that in mind, our next few episodes, we've got some amazing guests that we're going to interview, all on the topic of spiritual nutrition and what does that mean to them and how did they implement those things in their everyday life. So I am really stoked to get into these interviews and have some of our guests on and see what their take on all of these things is.
I too, I am very excited. We've got some really cool people coming on, and I can't wait to see what they're gonna bring, because I think it's gonna be, juicy.
Oh, yeah. We're ready to create our love army.
Yes! Bring it on,
Ooh.
love army!
Yes.
Oh, man. I love it.
All
I love it.
right. With that in mind, let's go ahead and wrap up. This is Magical Aspirations, and until next time, be magical.
Be magical, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Magical Aspirations. If you aren't already, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Magical Aspirations to keep up to date with the latest and the greatest from us here, as well as little bonuses from Reverend Raven, Adriana, and I. Leave us a review on your favorite listening platform so that others may find us more easily. Have a good one, and as always, stay true to your magic.